Okay, you know what? Let's go ahead and get started. And I wasn't actually planning on doing this at the beginning, but I'm looking around the room. There's a lot of faces I don't know. Just a quick show of hands. Do people know about One Northwest, who we are, what we do? Pretty good sense. Okay, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that. Basically, what One Northwest does, we are, it's called a capacity builder. We focus on the environmental movement. We help environmental organizations use technologies, new technologies and new strategies for engaging people in protecting the environment. That's our focus.
A little louder, kid.
You can't hear in the back?
A little louder.
Okay. So I'm going to stand right here because they're getting blasted by the light there. So first of all, let me just thank you all for coming tonight. This is a pretty good crowd for us. And I want to also, before we get started, I want to thank Aaron Thompson, who is a One Northwest board member. He's sitting right in the back there, and he is the person who sponsored tonight, so thank you, Aaron. So our topic for tonight, can you hear me in the back? I mean, am I yelling now? Is it can I turn it down a little bit? Okay.
Loud and clear.
Project.
Heckling is good too.
Heckling is,
Not me.
Topic for tonight: online social networks. That's if that's not why you came, then there's another session next door. And specifically online social networks, and can they be used for promoting social change? That's really what we're interested in tonight. And in a way, this is kind of an experiment for us. We've never really done this before. Where it's kind of a community learning exercise that we're trying out tonight. Why? Because what we were finding is a lot of the tools that One Northwest has been using for a while, we're so focused on the stuff that we do, databases, websites, email, that kind of stuff, and then we looked up one day and we said, God, this online social networking stuff is important. How do we learn about this? And so we thought, what better way than to bring together a bunch of our friends and smart people, and those can actually be the same, mutually exclusive, together to talk about this. So that's kind of what we're going to do tonight. And it's going to be fairly loose. The way that we're going to do it is I will in a minute introduce Karen Elfelman. Karen, where are you?
I'm right here.
Right there, and she's going to kind of be our MC for the evening. We've got 8 speakers or so, 7, 8 people who are going to come and kind of give various aspects of different lenses on this phenomena of online social networks. And then we're going to kind of turn it over to you all for some discussions. And we'll try to wrap it up around 7:30, which was the target. We're getting started a little bit later. There's some traffic. I think that's why a number of people still haven't showed yet. So online social networks. This is clearly a hot topic. We really were expecting about 20 people tonight. And boom, this is, I think we've got like probably 50, 60 people right here. There's like 70 who RSVP. You all are not alone in your interest in this. Corporate America has somehow taken notice of this. It may be all that juicy information that we're putting into these online social networks about ourselves. It's just like a magnet for advertisers. Last year, spring of last year, News Corp decided to invest about $580 million in acquiring MySpace. And then 6 months after that, Google turned around and purchased YouTube for $1.6 billion. That was like literally about a year ago today. A few months ago, Microsoft took like a 1.6% stake in Facebook, putting the valuation of Facebook at $15 billion. $15 billion. Just for a little context, one of the biggest companies in town, Starbucks, with its 40,000 stores around the world, $18 billion. So what we're saying is, we've got Facebook, which is the new online social networking place, $15 billion. We've got Starbucks with all its stores and all that stuff. It's kind of the old social networking place, right? About the same. Hype? I don't know. But sometimes when the market invests like that, sometimes it is just hype. But sometimes there's something interesting going on. There's some kind of social phenomenon that's happening that's worth taking a moment to think about. And that's what we wanted to do tonight, was think about that. Now, I had a bunch of thoughts that I was going to share, and basically I said, you know what, let's just turn it over to people. There's one thought that I'd like to share before we start. And that is that I think we're seeing a shift in behavior. We think a lot here at One Northwest about environmental organizations. I think we're seeing some shifts in behavior with the constituents of environmental organizations. The old days of kind of the classic membership model with lots of direct mail and all that kind of stuff, those days seem to be fading. And the new generation, people in their 20s and younger, they are not joining. They're not joining the membership model of traditional environmental organizations, the single issue focus, like their parents did. So they're doing something else. And the question is, what are they doing? And actually, if you look at these services, that's what they seem to be doing. So it's interesting. And actually, a few years ago, back in like 2004, I wrote a paper called Movement as Network that was trying to think about kind of the future of the environmental movement. And in that paper, there was an idea that I was toying with, which was the people organization. And I didn't quite get it right. There's some pieces of it that's like, no, that's not it. But a lot of what I was talking about then was the notion of bringing people together into networks that could then mobilize very quickly around issues, but that they wouldn't be joining individual issue-oriented organizations. And that is, in many ways, what we're seeing with these online social networks. There's copies of that paper over there. It's a little bit old now, but if you're interested, it's over there. So I do believe there is something happening here that's significant. And the question is what? So that's what we're going to do tonight. I'm going to turn it over to Karen in just one second. One thing I do want to say is that what you may see is there's a kind of I've noticed in some of the speakers there's a little bit of a focus on Facebook. We're not getting paid by Facebook or anything like that. It's just that in some ways Facebook is kind of an interesting one because there's so much activity on it. It's got 50 million people on it. And one of the things I think that is interesting about it is that Facebook made a pretty powerful move in the spring. What they did was they opened up their platform. They opened up their technology to third parties so that they could build applications that plug into Facebook. And when that happened, things seemed to shift. So that's why we're focusing there. There's a lot of stuff that's happening. Google just announced the week before last that they're doing kind of an end run around Facebook and doing with Open Social, like really opening it up. So this is going to change. This whole field is going to change. But we thought that tonight what we would do is just kick it off with some different perspectives. And with that, Karen Uppelman, do you want to come on over?
Yeah.
Okay.
First person who's going to talk is Jody Tanita.
Great. All right, well, I was the speaker who would show people what a online social networking site looked like if they had never seen it before. So I'm sort of Jane Average, and what I wanted to tell you about is my experience on Facebook. So Facebook popped into my life about 6 months ago. One of my roles, I work for One Northwest out of our Vancouver office, and one of my roles is as a conference organizer for Web of Change. And Web of Change brings together people working at the intersection of online communications and social change. And all of a sudden, I started getting all these invites from all these people in that community. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to check this out. And John Stahl was like, what are you doing on there? And I'm like, I don't know, but if I figured out what I wanted to do, everybody I need to do it to is here, right? So that's what was very curious to me. Yeah, everybody I needed to do it to was there. So being that my job is to really connect people and bring people together, one of the things that I found I could do in Facebook is rekindle relationships that maybe happen on a yearly basis. So stay in contact, stay connected to people, learn more about their networks of colleagues. Okay, so who they knew that we might have in common, and that helped me to see what would be relevant to them or who else I could invite. It's also, where desired, I could potentially deepen my my relationship with them. So, as I said, who I initially noticed on Facebook were a sector of my colleagues, technology professionals serving social change organizations in their 20s, 30s, 40s. I'm from Canada, and we have a much higher adoption rate of Facebook. And I'm also seeing it in slightly higher age range than I think most people would associate to it in the US. Why I use Facebook to communicate versus email is when I want to be less intrusive. So people receive it when they're in the mood to receive it. Okay, they go on, they're in the mode of wanting to like catch up with people, all of that sort of thing. Also, it's more casual. It's more of a blend of personal and professional rather than going to their work email address or their personal Gmail address, that sort of thing. Over the course of the last 6 months, more of my community has come online. So who came later was the Vancouver Progressive community and social change leaders. Okay, so people like Adrienne Maree Brown from the ED of the Ruckus Society, Van Jones, Andre Banks from Allied Media, all of those sorts of people who I've been able to keep in touch with. So I'm going to give you a quick tour of my Facebook profile. So here you go. Here's into Jody's life. Way more than I really want you to know. So the first thing you're going to learn about me tonight is
Your password.
Right?
the first thing you're going to learn about me tonight is everything, but particularly that it's my birthday. Okay? So when I first come onto Facebook, I see a page that tells me all of my friends that I've chosen on Facebook. It tells me a little bit about their activities. So I can go down. Catherine Burklas, she was the ED of N10. She left me a birthday message. Don Repta, he works for Friends of Clayoquot Sound. Steph Legault, a consultant in Victoria. Drew Bernard, my colleague here, uploaded a mobile photo. Mark Sermon in Toronto is talking about open content, these kinds of things, okay? So I can get a little sense of where everybody's at. If I go to my profile, okay, so you can see I'm up here on profile, you're going to see what I look like on Facebook. So I can change this photo whenever I want. I can give people a little status update of what I'm up to, a choice of what sort of stats I choose to give on myself, a little mini feed of what I've been doing on Facebook lately, okay? Here's my friends, all right? So you're seeing that I have 264 friends on Facebook. All of these are people I know. I can show you the organizations who have chosen to show up that on Facebook that I'm a fan of. Here's a little information about me, a quote that I happen to really like, some work info. People have given me gifts on Facebook. There they are, okay? Here are some things I've posted, things that I'm sort of interested in that I wanted to share that would show up in people's feeds. There's some causes that I'm promoting and that people can donate to, some politicians that I support, a social change question that people have been answering for me, and then here's my wall. So I want to show you who's on my wall right now. Because it shows you people's birthdays who are your friends, here's my colleague John Stahl. This is a wife of a former colleague of mine in the corporate world. Former ED from New York of N10. Steph Legault, a consultant, personal friend. Susan Gleason from Yes Magazine. Pam Shalou from Social Venture Partners. Jason Mokas from Communicopia.net. This is the administrative assistant of a local politician, these kinds of things. So these are people that I'm connected to, but would have never sent me a birthday message, okay? But because they were pinged on Facebook, they connected with me. So that's really just my little introduction to what my Facebook life looks like. Thank you.
So I'm David McDonald. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Washington in the Information School. The Information School is what we call a broad-based information school. We look at social and technical issues information school movement across the United States is actually a transition of what had been library schools to include broader issues of technology, management, policy, sort of across the board. And so that's something you may hear about is information schools. So my area of research is actually computer-supported cooperative work, which is actually how, so you talk about this notion of something called human-computer interaction, HCI. This is the idea of how people interact with a computer. Computer-supported cooperative work is often this notion of how people interact and collaborate with each other through a computer, or through some kind of technology mediation. And so I'm going to give you the kind of what are some of the issues, if you're thinking about high-level issues, maybe from an academic point of view, because I'm an academic, what are some of the things you maybe want to think about? So the first question I started asking, because academics love to ask questions, is so what's really new about social networking systems? What's really new here? What is it that we actually get out of these things? So one is there's this notion of a persistent presentation of self, and you saw that in the form of a profile. And those profiles have some persistence, they last for some time. In some cases, they last forever. Okay? That's interesting. You have an explicit articulation of friends. How many people do you go up to a day-to-day basis and go, I'm your friend, I'm your friend, I'm your friend? We don't do this. So there's something interesting, there's something unusual about explicitly articulating your friends. Perhaps there's also this notion of breaking a boundary of our physical relationships, and that is that no longer are we bound by just talking and chatting with the people who are in the same room as us. We actually maybe get to talk about and interact with people who are right miles away. Right? So but maybe that's not terribly new. Right? One thing is maybe this is actually just the hot new place to see and be seen. Right? And if that's a certain understanding, you think about it in that way, that could have real value. The way I actually think about it is, if I start distilling it down, actually this is sort of just another way of building a type of online community, a community of like-minded people, people who want to interact. And so when I think about community, I think that there's sort of 4 critical issues that you have to facilitate. To have a community online, you got to get these things. One is this notion of affiliation, that basically members have to say that they participate, they join, they affiliate with that community, with that group. So you have to have some kind of way of thinking about affiliation. Members have to have a way to interact. They actually have to acknowledge other members in the group. All right, so they have to be able to interact. I mean, if you think about the email list, this is part of one of the ways we deal with that. Accountability. All groups have standards of behavior, standards of practice. And this notion of accountability is the way in which we hold each other to those standards. And so we have to have some notion of accountability and how we're going to build accountability. And the other thing is that we have to have this notion of mutual support. In some cases, we don't look at that as an important and critical issue. But when a member of our community is somehow having a social problem, or there's something about their well-being, it's part of something that we do when we are community members to support those people. And so mutual support is a critical thing. So these are 4 things that I think you have to have. So now how does that relate to social networking? Well, it turns out that if you're thinking about social networking and you're sort of articulating those critical issues across what's new or what we know about social networking sites, then you have to think about this. So this notion of identity, which I'll equate to this notion of affiliation. How do individuals present themselves in profiles? What are the dimensions of a profile? What are the things and pieces that they have to have? And you actually saw a nice set of like all of these pieces of the profile. And in some cases, you explicitly state them, like, this is my favorite quote. In other cases, they're a little bit more implicit, right? Under this notion of, do profiles last for forever, right? What are you going to do when you have a profile? And what are the implications of if they last for forever? So one of the things that's very interesting and that some of the research community is talking about is elections 20 years from now are going to be really different when we start dredging up Facebook profiles of people when they were high school students and they're all running for the Senate. This is going to get fun, right? So there's some implications there, and I think if you're building something like that, you have to think about what that means for your members, because members have different ideas. They come in and out of groups, and you want to be sensitive to that because that's going to make them feel good about your group. Interactions, how do they interact? What are the opportunities for interaction and personal revelation? Personal revelation is how we disclose. We found out about a birthday. That's a disclosure. How many of you are going to advertise your birthdays today, right? So disclosure is something that we do, and we have to think about that. And how are those things structured? How do we structure it? Because groups, the group that you are here to support, the reason why you're coming, that group has an end. So the interaction is often structured to some end, and you have to think about how not only do they interact, but you orient it toward the end. And the next thing is about the norms, or this notion of accountability, and that is, how do you keep bad behavior in check? And I put that in quotes because I don't want to make a value statement about what is good or bad behavior. I'm an academic, so I look at it all kind of the same. Right? So how do you keep bad behavior in check while facilitating the desirable behavior? Because you don't want people coming in and destroying your community, and you want to somehow prevent that, whatever destroying the community means. Maybe creating sites of turmoil. And who decides those norms? Are those norms the norms that the community members themselves, or does your organization have some specific standard that you're going to state, right? And then what are the consequences for breaching a norm? Can you boot people out of your community? Do you do that? Is that something you're willing to do? Do you ever do that? So you have to think about those. Then this last one, which is sort of an interesting thing, is also big in the academic community and thinking about these social networking sites, are things about privacy. How are you sensitive to concerns that your members have to try and help them understand what it is in their profile that they're revealing? Is there some way that you should express to them something about what other people see of them that they may not understand that they're revealing? And there are some very good things about privacy. So what is the community? What about the community member is exposed? That is, what types or what things of their profile are you showing? What other relationships are exposed? Maybe there are some relationships that are important to illustrate and others that are not. I love the social networking sites where I can chase down and see the friend of the friend of the friend of the friend and figure out that I'm connected to Bill Gates. It's only 3 hops, right? And what are the risks to the person? That is, how are they taking on risks? So I'm going to stop here because I just wanted to kind of raise some things so that you start thinking about this as you maybe move forward.
Awesome.
Thank you.
You're next up.
My name's Alex Steffen. I edit WorldChanging.com. We're an online magazine and blog that focuses on sustainability.
Little
Speak
louder.
up. All right. And a little over a year ago, we were faced with a bit of a problem, which was we had been working on a book, a big book. It's 600 pages. It had taken us the better part of half a year to get finished, and a couple of years to do the research on. And the book publisher, while a great company and a mid-sized publisher, was nowhere near the kind of big publishers that have the clout to get a book noticed out there. I don't know how much you guys know about book publishing, but it makes music look like a soft and cuddly world. It's, essentially you need massive budgets and a lot of momentum to get the chains to say, we will take a bunch of these books, put them somewhere where somebody might see them and sell them. And without getting the chains to do that, and without getting the big, like paperback book clubs to do it, there's no way you can succeed, basically. I mean, there are exceptions that prove the rule, but you need enormous amount of momentum to just simply survive. And here we were with a mid-sized publisher, a book project budget that was about, half to a tenth of what most big books publicity budgets were, right? And and a kind of obscure topic, which is what are the best solutions out there for working on big planetary problems like environmental sustainability, poverty alleviation, democracy building, and the like, right? So because we put a bunch of work into the book, we didn't want to see it just sink beneath the waves, and we started thinking, well, what do we have to work with here? We don't have money. Right? We don't have fame. At that point, there'd only been a handful of news stories about our organization anywhere, and we certainly don't have connections in the book world such that we can, get ourselves on Charlie Rose or something like that. So, but we looked around. What we did have, right, was a really big audience and a lot of friends, and many of those friends themselves had blogs or other sites. Many of them had a lot of friends on social networking sites. Many of them kept email lists, right? Many of them had lots of ways of connecting to one another and to other people. And we also had a friend who worked at Amazon and who told us how the Amazon algorithm for bestseller works, which is essentially just whoever sold the most copies in the last 24 hours rises to the top of the list. Except that the day you come out all the copies that have been sold up till then count in your first hour, right? So, all the pre-orders that you get plus everything that day. And so we realized if we could get a bunch of our friends who might already be planning to buy the book to buy it in one day, we might at least get some notice on Amazon, and that might help something. And if we could show that there was some interest, maybe our publicist at the book publisher could go ahead and send out some faxes or something like that, and look, they got up to number 500. Somebody might buy this book someday. Well, so we started emailing around and asking people to put stuff up on their blogs, to buy the book, and we put up posts on our blog and said, hey everyone, converge on the 11th of November, and buy the book that day or before, and let's see if we can't show people that there's some interest. Well, the thing kind of took a life of its own, and a lot of our audience members, I think, stepped up, and we premiered at number 11 out of 55 million books on Amazon on our first day. On the strength of that, the next day, Barnes & Noble bought 18,000 copies. And a week later, we were selected as a Paperback Book of the Month Club main selection, which was another 20,000 copies. So there is power in this stuff. You can leverage things that are not otherwise possible. And I don't have any other big dramatic lessons to say other than that I think that the movement that we're all in has done a really poor job of understanding exactly how much leverage is available for how few resources, and has put even fewer than those resources that are needed into it. And I hope that folks like us in this room can kind of start to change that, because I think there's a huge audience out there that will never send a membership check, but will do a million other things to help. So, anyway, thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sasha Summer Cousineau, and I work for NARAL Pro-Choice Washington. We get squeezed by it. I've come tonight to talk about how we have started using MySpace as a community organizing and educational tool. I'm the director of volunteer and youth programs there, and so I am charged very specifically with working to incorporate into our organization folks about my age or within my age bracket and younger. So I'm in my mid-30s, and I work with high school students up to about people my age. For example, I do a young professionals event every summer, really targeting folks who are maybe newer to the workforce with a little bit of disposable income. I do a youth leadership summit targeting high school and college students, run service learning internship programs, yada, yada, yada. And so, you've heard a few people mention tonight that the way people are receiving information or the way that people are engaging with organizations is changing. From our own organization's experience, we know that using telephones is not working the way it used to. People are not answering the phone. Using mail is not working the way it used to. We're not receiving a lot of funds through the mail the way we used to. We also know that the way people receive information has dramatically changed. We're very, very invested in elections. And even since the last presidential election, even since 2004, the way people are receiving political messages has changed. So for example, our national organization is now starting to use text messaging. So since we are very, very concerned with movement sustainability, meaning getting younger people involved, and with changing the face of who elected officials are paying attention to and why, we started putting an eye towards how to engage, how to bring in more members between 18 and 35 to our organization, how to educate these constituents about choice issues, and then turning that, mobilizing that as a voter block. What I'll say is that we're not experts on this yet. We're definitely still learning, but we've gotten some really great learning lessons in a very short amount of time. So where we started, this is our MySpace page, and where we started is we wanted to be pretty intentional about the way we built our friends list, the way we built our online community. Choice is an issue. Reproductive health, rights, and justice has been made into a pretty polarizing and contentious issue. And so we wanted to be pretty intentional about how we were getting ourselves out there. So we started with people who are already invested in the organization. And if you're looking even just at the very top of who is at the top of our friends list, it is staff, interns, other organizations that are very, very like-minded, and performers in the community who have high profiles of their own, who have expressed support for us and have performed at our events and so on and so forth. So we started with just a very internal dialogue. Hey, let's all add each other on MySpace. Let's feature each other. So, for example, me, right there, that's Halloween, by the way, I put NARAL as one of my top friends, and then posted a bulletin, hey friends, add NARAL as one of your friends. Pretty much all of our staff, interns, and service learning members did the same thing. We asked our performers, like Christina Orbe here in Soul Child and some other folks who have kind of high performance profiles in the community to do the same. They did it, and we sort of began to grow very organically in that way. From there, we began to do searches for folks who are pro-choice, folks who have other pro-choice affiliations, and added them as friends. And then once it looked like we had we didn't want to look lame before we made a huge announcement to the community, right? And so once it looked like we had a good grouping of people, we then used our Choice Action Network, our email activist alert system, to say, check it out, we have a MySpace page. We didn't want to do that sort of big like coming out announcement until we had something cool to show. But when we did, we had a really great response, and we built up our friends list from there. So some other things that you should be aware about as organizers is that there are various privacy settings on MySpace. Again, choice being somewhat a contentious issue. We have been thoughtful about that. We don't allow people to make comments on our bulletin without us approving them. For example, we don't want anything that's going to be damaged. We're a very message-oriented organization, let's put it that way, and we really want to control the content of what sort of information is representing our organization. Very conscious about that. So we don't let people post comments, and so here's our comments here. We don't let people post comments that we don't pre-approve, which is an option. The other thing is that if we have not specifically asked somebody to be a friend, somebody asks us to befriend on MySpace, we kind of check out their profile. We're under no illusion that you can totally control who gets access about your organization and what your organization is doing. I'm absolutely sure that anti-choice people have access to the information we're putting out there. But to the degree we can, we don't want to, for example, give them a heads up that we're having a rally tomorrow so that we have a huge counter rally when we show up. So we check out people's pages before we have them on our friends list to sort of just control that sort of response to us. The other thing that we've done is, here's something I've learned about MySpace. People are not, and things like YouTube as well, people are not going there for long intellectual conversations. People are going there for quick, snippy, quippy information. Most of the time they're going there for information. Most of the time they're going there to socialize. They're not often going there to build their intellectual capital, right? It can be used in that way, but that's not really the intent. It's like, can I get a date on Friday, so on and so forth. So one thing that we've learned is to be pretty quickie. We use sometimes edgy bulletins, edgy topic lines, and we keep it short, simple, and to the point. As organizers, we need to remember that the truth is not always going to set people free. People want quick. People are being bombarded with online messages. So give them quick, and where they want more information, they can get it. And so we've really, really tied all of our online communications together, MySpace, Facebook, YouTube, and then our own organizational website in a way so that if people do want more information, they go to our organizational website. If they do want more information, they can sign up for, I'll show you up here, Choice News, which we post in our blog every single day. And what we've learned by really being intentional about connecting all of our online communications, if you go to any one of them, you'll find information on the other, always. And what we've learned by that is people like to be connected to the organization, and they like to receive information in a very personalized way. This is the age of personalization. And so we've had people say, please don't send us Choice News to my email every day. I would rather go online and get it when I want it. And the vice versa has been true. So that's been a really great organizing tool, being able to reach people the way they want to be reached. And I know I'm probably running out of time, just very quickly let you know that we have had some success using Facebook and MySpace, but since I'm here to talk about MySpace, that's what I'll focus on. In terms of organizing the demographic we were looking to organize when we started this whole project. For example, I told you I have a Young Professionals event every single summer, targeting people in their later 20s, early 30s to come party and hang out and learn a little bit about us. We did event invitations and bulletin blog posts and blogs about the event, and we did get a response on MySpace from people who wanted to attend. More recently, I had a youth leadership summit. We had about 70 high school and college students there, and although the number doesn't sound staggering, about 10 people signed up using one of these online social networking. If you do the math, 10 out of 70, it's actually a sizable chunk. So again, this is growing. We're learning. I didn't give you all the information that I hoped to, but I don't want to hold off other speakers, and I can answer other questions afterwards.
Thank you.
I'm Chuck Ruthven. I'm here to tell you about the dangers of volunteering for One Northwest. Because I started as a programmer volunteering for One Northwest. I learned how to develop web-based applications. And I feel like the developer they let out of the basement tonight, because I started in their old office way over, where was that? Across the bay. And so I don't know how many of you are like very technical. How many of you are either funding organizations that build websites or are planning to build websites for your organization? And how many of you are looking to leverage social networks that already exist for your organization? So some of what I'll talk about may be a little bit more technical. I'll be around afterwards. I'm just going to talk to you about some themes I've been coming up against in my own work. So when I started developing web applications with One Northwest, it actually led to me starting a company called Action Studio, which is an online advocacy service. And the project that I'm spending most of my time on today is newscloud.com, which is a collaborative social news website. How many of you have heard of Dig? Okay, so Dig is a for-profit startup, and as soon as they can, they're going to sell it to very large companies like Yahoo or Google for a lot of money. I've started a similar site that's really for progressives and organizers to share stories and discuss stories that are important to them. And I built it with open source tools. How many of you know about open source? That's great. So basically I'm taking a different philosophy to building a company, a media platform. And so I've come up into the Facebook world in a bunch of different ways. How many of you know what Facebook applications are? Okay, so I've built 4 Facebook applications. Most recently, I built one for British Columbia's energy company. They did a gifts application that raised energy, environmentally conscious issues by letting people send eco-conscious gifts. I built, for fun, a Daily Show news viewer, so you could watch Daily Show video clips on Facebook and share it with your friends. And then I built one for NewsCloud so that I could learn about the platform and see if I could leverage Facebook for my own project. So I've watched as Facebook has kind of had its ups and downs with the platform, and I've watched as they've struggled with issues of profanity and obscenities, and I've watched as they've struggled with developing their platform. How many of you may have heard of, there was a situation where there's a group, an anti-Islamic group that started on Facebook, and 78,000 people are members of a group on Facebook to stop that, but they've yet to be able to get Facebook to pay any attention. So that's an example to me that Facebook, being a kind of a corporate closed social network, has not been very effective at giving organizers and activists really good tools for making change. And so I've watched as lots and lots of groups have tried to use Facebook for that purpose, but writing on a wall of a cause is not going to get the kind of change that we need. And so I started a group to just supersede all of those groups. It's called the Useless Facebook Group to Stop People from Being Mean to Other People. So if you join that, we won't need any of the other groups. But seriously, I was at Web of Change this year, which Jody co-organized, and there was a ton of attention on Facebook, partly because it's so prevalent in Canada. But it's really a closed system. Like, the only reason we use it is because most of our friends are there, and then once we're all there, it's kind of a monopoly that we can't get out of, and we can only do the things that they let us do. And so recently I wrote an article called Breaking Open Facebook, which was kind of a call to the open source community to look at building a more open technical infrastructure for replacing Facebook, and that's sort of what Google started to do as well. And if any of you are interested in talking about that, I'll be around after. But one of the big ideas at Web of Change was this idea of building networks that encourage individuals to participate and collaborate, which seems like a no-brainer. But on online social networks that only provide you tools like discussion boards and walls, it's really hard to see how you can get people to work together. So I'm still letting all the feedback and the ideas from Web of Change kind of percolate down to my NewsCloud work, and I've come up with a new approach that I just want to share a little bit with you about. It's not fully formed, but I want to talk to you about some of the themes tonight. And basically, I call it building a network, not an island, because I see a lot of groups that want to build loan-based sites, Drupal-based sites, build their own websites, and get everybody to come there and register and do what they want them to do. And what that does is it's really requiring us as each organization to kind of start over and build up our own communities online and start from scratch. And it's difficult from a technical position, and it makes it hard for groups to work together. And so with all the work that I do with NewsCloud now, I'm kind of thinking in terms of how do I build NewsCloud as a network that's part of the internet rather than as a single destination. And so some of the themes that I've come up with are that basically let people come to your site as they are. So there's actually technologies out there that let people associate with your site without putting in a password. And so those are some of the things, like if you go to NewsCloud, you can actually sign up and register for NewsCloud with your Facebook account. And there's also something called OpenID. You can use OpenID to do that. The other thing is to regularly promote the content of partners and members. So you're not just promoting your own content, but you're promoting other people's work as well, and driving traffic from your site on the internet to other sites. And then by collaborating that way with people, they're going to drive traffic back to your site. How much time do I have? 1 minute? None? Oh, sorry. So I'll be around. Let me just say one more thing. There's this concept of inverting. Rather than building a website where everybody comes to you, you're building tools that allow people to see the content on your website and interact with it from their sites. And if any of you have an interest in talking about that, I'll be around to share.
Thanks, Jeff.
Hi, my name is Brian Gershon. I work next door at the Web Collective, which is an 8-person cooperative, and we focus primarily on building websites for values-based organizations. And we're very interested in also developing and using some of these tools that we've been talking about today. So I'm here to talk about more of a, just like Jeff was talking about, more of a developer perspective on, you saw a lot of great applications and things on Facebook. How do those applications get built? And like Jeff was saying, you end up having a monopoly potentially on some applications. So what is Google's Open Social? First, it was just announced a couple of weeks ago, so it's pretty new. You haven't missed the boat or anything by not hearing about it. Or maybe you have, I don't know, a week of time. It's not a new social network, so it's not like Facebook or the ones. It's really a platform for building applications that you can run on multiple social sites. So what basically happens is sites such as MySpace will implement what's called open social, and anyone who writes an application for Open Social will be able to go to that site, write applications that look at people's profiles, look at people's friends, and then let you do activities. But what's really interesting about it is that that application that somebody writes, and I'll talk about a few examples in a second, you could actually run on multiple platforms, which is something that Facebook has its own platform. They've opened up their platform, and they see people coming in droves. Google's Open Social is kind of helping the rest of those hundreds of social sites that aren't as big as Facebook kind of potentially build applications that they share. And developers can use their existing tools. You don't have to know any new tools to do it, so it's really great for developers to get. So some examples that I pulled off their site are MySpace is actually now announcing Open Social as their official API to create applications on. So they've been working kind of behind the scenes with Google to come up and open up their API, just like Facebook. So again, to allow people to do applications for it. They had a bunch of examples and said,
What's an API?
oh, sorry, yeah. It's a way of building applications to take advantage of things like
Application programming interface.
Yeah, but that may not help much. It's a way to basically allow applications that run, like you saw in MySpace, all those different applications running, to get at people's profile information, a common way of getting at information that you can then display at the site. So some of the other examples are Flickster, which lets you rate favorite movies that you like. They wrote an application that now runs on MySpace and Ning. I don't know if people heard of Ning. It's a way to, I guess there's 115,000 local networks. It's a way to create your own Facebook or whatever for your own application. So it's kind of, it's tools to let you build your own networks. That's pretty cool. So Flickster lets you vote on movies. Which lists two sites. Another one called I Like, which is voting on music that you like, allows artists to, this is really interesting too, is you have all these different platforms out there. What they were able to do is create an application that runs on multiple things, and when the musicians came out to announce their albums, they could post it in one place and actually end up having it circulate through all these networks. They don't have to go to Facebook, they don't have to go to all these networks to post there. They can do it through an application that could be shared across, so it's pretty powerful that way. Another one is LinkedIn. A lot of people mentioned they're on LinkedIn. They're also a member of this Open Social, And so their example was you have an opportunity, and you have a bunch of friends that have an opportunity to try to get a client or something like that. And what this will let you do is maybe attend an event, so you can see kind of all the people that are going to attend your event. You can go in and add things like maybe the people that aren't attending the event but live in that city, they are friends of yours, and there's all kinds of possibilities. Another one is, or actually, yeah, Salesforce is another one that people have probably heard about, and they allow, there's an application that they wrote that lets you create kind of a network tag, kind of showing different friends and things that are going on in your Salesforce. So that's pretty much all I had to say. If you're curious about this, you can go to Google's Open Social blog, and they have only about 6 or 7 posts, it's that new. But they have a nice video up there as well that kind of walk through a lot of the examples that they gave. But you can watch an hour video and just see how powerful it is for all these social networks that aren't Facebook.
That was, what was that? Google what?
Google Open Social blog, and there's a video there as well. And then there's all kinds of information about if you're a developer, which I don't think this audience really is. There's ways of getting to start playing with code in both Ning, High5, which is a pretty international one, Plaxo, and all the various places you can start building applications and doing those. So.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, great.
My name is Alex. I'm with the Oregon Bus Project. There's multiple bus projects. These folks are from the Washington Bus Project, so we're all over the place. But the Bus Project is an innovative vehicle for hands-on democracy. We drive boats, we drive leaders, we drive change, and yes, we have a bus. And what does that mean? We get young people involved in politics, both voting and volunteering. And so, since we're talking about young people and seems to be the generation of Facebook, we're obviously trying to use Facebook and social networking to do some of our core programs. The 2 core programs that we have that we use Facebook for are bus trips, which is just general candidate support for going out and knocking on doors and supporting progressive candidates in swing districts, and building votes, which is voter registration targeted at young people in precincts with a high number of young people, focusing on, I guess, that voter registration. So particularly Facebook. We have a MySpace page, but I think that we've been using Facebook. We have a Facebook group, and we use that as one other way to get messages out to people in our networks. I'm not sure that we use Facebook in a particularly innovative way, and I'm really excited to come here and hear about what you all are doing. But I can talk briefly about one project that we're hoping to launch by January. It is a Facebook application that we're hoping to build, and I'm not building it, so the other people are building it. But this is what we wanted to do. We have this thing called Days for Democracy, which is basically a volunteer commitment, a 4-hour volunteer commitment to do something with the bus. So going and knocking on doors, helping out a candidate, working on a committee at the Bus Project, or helping out our partners with their events. And so by January, we're hoping to get everybody who's pledged to do a Day for Democracy, which is actually thousands of people at this point. Each person get their own personalized webpage that has days committed, that they've committed to do, days fulfilled, what events they've done in the past, and what prizes or recognitions they've received. So performance things like most doors knocked on a canvas, or most people talked to, most voters registered, but also things that are more like the funniest story after a canvas that somebody tells. So different prizes and recognitions that people get when they're out in the world doing this kind of volunteer work. And ultimately, we want to make that into kind of an icon format, or kind of like a merit badge, to have some kind of cool, visual representation that kind of shows, oh, this is how I'm volunteering. This is what I've done. And then we're hoping to build a Facebook badge, or a Facebook application onto that information, basically. So a badge that would go on a profile that would visually display some or all of that information that would be on their kind of Days for Democracy profile page. So, the number of days they've committed, a little bit about what the Bus Project is, some of the things that they've done, and hopefully make it in a visually attractive format, so that to fulfill two goals. One is recognition. So it's a way of kind of letting people brag about what they've done. Like, hey, I'm on the bus, I'm part of this cool organization, this is the things that I've done, for my community, and I want you to see it there. And it kind of has little badges and stuff like that. So it's trying to make it an attractive, make it so it's the Bus Project, like the programs look attractive and out there in the world, people kind of brag about what they've done and what awards they've gotten, recognition. And the other is just providing a way to drive traffic through friend networks to the bus from other people, you know, who may not be in our network. So it's not just the bus kind of going and emailing our group, but it's hopefully reaching out to a broader audience. So that is the Bus Project's Facebook application that we're in development, and I'd love to talk to people afterwards if they have ideas about, you know, other Facebook type applications specifically for reaching out to volunteers. So,
Thanks.
My name is Kevin Moore, and I'm not only the last speaker, but unaffiliated. And these are both good things. Being last, I get to attempt philosophical convergence, and being unaffiliated means I can be derogatory and not insult some organization that's in here. I want to talk about sheep versus cats. And I have this philosophy that, you know, I think a lot of us in the progressive social movement are kind of fighting the sheep. You know, they're sheep politically, which follow one social issue, or maybe guns, or maybe, you know, lower taxes. I think we follow sheep in business. There are people that are following next quarter, or the next bonus, or the next paycheck, and they're not really thinking broadly. Maybe even sheep in terms of consumers, which are people that, you know, going for the biggest TV, the biggest SUV, or the biggest house, or the biggest lawn. And, you know, I think a lot of us, you know, wouldn't associate ourselves with sheep. We're more cats. And I think we'd all agree that cats are more intelligent than sheep, but also they're impossible to herd. And really, our goal here is how do we herd the cats? I think the current organization structure that a lot of people pursue really is good for cats, though. You know, it's like join the mailing list, you know, and we'll tell you everything you need to do. You know, come volunteer, write this check. And it's really the NBC model, and not NBC now because they're trying to get cool, but like NBC in the '60s. Like it's very broadcast focused. And really, if you look at, you know, who I describe the cats, these are the people doing the Facebooks and the MySpaces, right? And the you know, that crowd. And one of the big differences, really, it's because, you know, people that are into those things want to pivot. They want to browse. They want to explore, right? They don't want to be broadcast at. So it's not an organization focus. It's not an organizational pivot. It's a pivot on people. What are you interested in? What issues do you care about? What organizations are you in? It's a pivot on interest. Let me go to let me find an interest, and who's in my neighborhood? Who do I know? Who in my social network is interested in that issue? Like those are the problems we're trying to solve. This broadcast model, I think, is very old. It was bad in the '90s, and even now it's embarrassing. So we should think about this notion of pivoting and browsing and exploring. So how? We certainly talked about Facebook. The points about Facebook that were brought up, Jeff mentioned these. You know, the fact that it's proprietary is a bad thing. You know, you put all your eggs in one basket there. And they certainly have different goals. Like if they could sell out, they would. If your organization embarrasses them or puts them in an awkward situation, they will shut it down. And so really the notion of having something open, something shared, something that's not owned by one corporation that's trying to sell advertising is a good thing, I think. So how do we solve that? You know, there's not someone else providing the infrastructure. But we could say we need common infrastructure, right? So what does that mean? We merge organizations. I personally like that because I'm on 15 mailing lists for MoveOn and John Kerry and Al Gore and, you know, Ezra and, you know, I'm sure we all have like this fatigue about all these organizations, all these mails we get, right? But I think merging organizations wouldn't really work. How about merging IT? Maybe we all have the same, we all use one server for mailing lists, right? And then I can go on as one person, one login, change all my mailing list settings. Wouldn't that be nice? Well, that's also impractical, right? I think the notion of merged technology is interesting though too. If you were to take maybe 50 organizations in Seattle, how many content management systems do they have? Maybe 15 different ones? Maybe instead of 15 different content management systems, maybe there were 3. Maybe it was Plune and Drupal and, you know, one other one. The idea there being if there's a set of shared agreement around, hey, these are the 3 we really like, then we can start leveraging shared IQ, shared experience, as opposed to everyone kind of fighting these IT battles by themselves. So maybe there's a list of like, here's 60 organizations and all the CMSs, and say, are you delighted with yours? Are you okay with yours? Do you hate yours? And maybe roll towards one that's more popular. So then you can start sharing this experience around the technology. And that gives us a platform to move towards things that would look like a shared, you know, protocols, what I'm going to call this. And so the question I'll ask is, who in here subscribes to blogs? Blog reader? Okay, keep your hands up high. Now, leave your hand up if you think you understand XML. Oh, hands go down. So you can understand and use these cool protocols without understanding the technology underneath. My mom uses HTML and HTTP all day, and she has no clue. And so my interest, and maybe Jeff and Brian and some of these other folks, is how do we start talking about those shared protocols? And looking at something as simple as RSS, right? Like, how do we do aggregation? How does an organization advertise? Here are the issues we care about. Here are the people that are affiliated with us in some way without, you know, dealing with privacy issues. I think we can start exploring interesting applications in those ways without some notion of we're going to sell ourselves to Facebook or put all our eggs in one basket in terms of one server. And so that's my kind of personal interest, and I'm sure you've heard enough, so I'll be done. Thank you.
And I wanted to pose a couple of questions to the room. And I know, like, the presentations here, we kind of organized this all on the fly, so it's a little bit spaghetti, right? So we're talking about lots of different things. And what I wanted folks to discuss at your tables a little bit is I have two questions that we talked about that we thought would be useful to get feedback from everybody that's here. And the first question, I'm going to give you a very brief period of time to talk about it, so I want you to all pay attention and make sure everybody gets a chance to speak to it. And then we're going to have reports back from the tables after we've gone through the two questions. But the first question is, what questions do you have after listening to all of these really short, varied presentations about online social networks? So I'm going to give you about 6 minutes right now to talk about that at your tables. So go ahead and start speaking. Go around to each table, and I just want you to give me like a little nugget that came out of your conversation about these questions. Really short, right? Because we only have about 15 or 20 more minutes. So bring that back to this table.
Hey, Karen.
Speak up.
So the mushroom theory. The mushroom theory is that for a long time we've been regarding the point of activism as nurturing specific organizations, that the health of the movement is the health of those organizations, and that what we're maybe beginning to understand is that organizations are actually more like mushrooms, with them being sort of the fruit and the actual most of the mushroom being underground and not seen. And that maybe we're starting to hit a point where the point of activism is to, grow the mushroom and have lots of little mushrooms coming up on a regular basis, and maybe some large ones as well. But that really what's important is what is rarely seen as the movement.
Great. All right, table here.
Right. So for the second question, our big takeaway was that social networks are allowing a lowered barrier to connection between individuals, so that it's easier for people to connect with like-minded individuals, that they feel less isolated. It's easier to get a more diverse community together. It's easier for people to make their beliefs public, thanks to social networks.
Great. How about you guys?
Distilled it down to the opportunity, the key opportunity being that social networks can lubricate the exchange of passion. Getting you to someplace physical with your friends.
Right on.
Can't take you anywhere.
That's right. No more beer for that guy. But yeah.
Talked about a number of things, but something we took on for at least a little bit more time was about how we figure out how successful we are in using the social networking tools, trying to make sure it's more interactive than broadcast, and also just a discussion on how we figure out if it's really working and getting to our mission.
Great. Okay, back there, you guys who are sort of amongst that.
So when there's critical decision points on items, on maybe legislative things, or something big is happening and there's a decision point, being able to have access to your network, not only to find people who care about that issue and send a stream out and say, hey, this is happening. So we were talking about water trails, maybe a bill about open access that also Cascade Agenda cares about, and they both have networks, and someone at the middle can say, hey, you guys, this is happening, can you send that out to your network and get people to take this action? And that's something, and the fact that you can do it passively and you're not putting it in people's email box, you don't have to get permission to send that because they've already permission to let you post things to that social network, that's very powerful because there's all these limitations around sending people things that you didn't get permission to send them.